I played Final Fantasy XI for 33,000 hours.
The DS games, they're there, which is nice for them.
We didn't understand version specifics because we were tiny and the internet didn't exist and our brains were dumb.
I don't like games holding my hand. I'm like, stop holding my hand.
Welcome to Save States and Fetch Quest, where we journey back to our games that defined our childhoods. Each week, we dive deep into a beloved retro title, sharing our memories, exploring what made these games so special, and uncovering the secrets behind their lasting appeal. Whether you're here for nostalgia or just discovering these classics for the first time, we've got something for you. And I'm your host, once again, Raz, joined by Redmate, Hampy, and Toady, and today we're continuing our journey through the games that bring us the most nostalgia. In episode 1, we covered our number 3 and 2 picks. Now it's time to dive into everyone's number 1 game or franchise. These are the games that defined our childhoods the most. So let's jump right in, because we got three big ones coming up. We had a lot of shared voting for this one. The only franchise that only got one vote is the one we're starting with, which, it definitely one of my honorary mentions. But let's throw it over to Redmate so he can reveal our first of our top 3.
All right. I mean, with the name of Red Mage, what do people think that my number 1 pick is going to be?
Balloon Fight.
That's a good
Caesar.
one. That's a good one, but close. No, of course we're talking Final Fantasy here. Final Fantasy, a franchise that has so many different games in it that are so different yet so similar. It has an amazing storyline for each and every single entry in the list. Seriously, if you have never played a Final Fantasy game, just go out, pick one, and enjoy the story, right? It's, yeah. But for me, the whole journey for Final Fantasy started with my then girlfriend introducing me to Final Fantasy VII. So Final Fantasy VII, my first game experience with Final Fantasy, but only watching, because she was playing and she was already mid-story, and so she was explaining what everything is, how this worked, and so on. And I was intrigued, right? And we're talking right around the release of Final Fantasy VIII at the time. So the first game that I played myself was Final Fantasy VIII. And to this day, my sister tells me that this is one of the stories that she tells everyone, that she loved watching me play Final Fantasy VIII, specifically for the fights and summoning up Guardian Forces. This is one of these core memories that I have. I bought my first PlayStation, brought it into our living room, hooked it up to the TV, and played Final Fantasy VIII. And from there, it basically just spiraled for me. I played Final Fantasy VII, I played Final Fantasy VIII. Then, oh my god, the most amazing moment in time when on the Square Millennium, what was it called? I just have to go to my notes. Yeah, the Square Millennium event, when they showed us not one Final Fantasy game, because everyone was, of course, expecting Final Fantasy IX. They also not showed us 2 Final Fantasy games because they were showing off 9 and 10. Nope, they tripled it up with Final Fantasy 9, 10, and 11 on that event, with all completely different games, yet so much Final Fantasy, right? Final Fantasy 9, your classic, traditional JRPG fantasy story that has quirky characters, that has the height of the PlayStation 1, was developed at the same time as Final Fantasy X, which of course made use of everything that the new system, the PlayStation 2 at the time, had to offer. And then Final Fantasy XI, a bit of a curveball at the time, showing us an MMO for the very first time in that whole square soft kind of range with the Final Fantasy notion at the on the side. So you really weren't sure what are we going to expect from an MMO that is set within the Final Fantasy franchise, and on top of that, within the numbering scheme for Final Fantasy, right? It was not Final Fantasy Online. It was Final Fantasy 11 Online, right? So you knew that this is a mainstay or intended as a mainstay game. And yeah, with that, from there, of course, it went on to all of those other games. Like you then figured out, or I've then figured out about Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy III, as it was called in the US, with the most amazing storyline that any Final Fantasy game has, bar 9, because honestly 9, it is always between, for me it's always between 6 and 9, which is the better storyline, right? Which is the better game. And honestly, if you look at um things like Metacritic and stuff, and if you look at how the game ratings are, Final Fantasy 9 is the game with the highest rating. It is the game that got a 95 on Metacritic. No other Final Fantasy game got that high up. Final Fantasy 7, 10, 6 are the runner-ups to that in that order, right? So 7 is the second, 10 the third, 6 is the fourth, which I don't get because I do think that 6 has the edge on the other two as well, in terms of story and in terms of overall what the system at the time as well could do. Because let's face it, Final Fantasy 6 is a Super Nintendo game, whereas Final Fantasy 9 is a PlayStation 1 game, Final Fantasy 10 is a PlayStation 2 game, right? If we take the respective systems into consideration, they have so much to give. But yeah, so for me, it's always between 6 and 9 in terms of the story. Which one is the better game? Um, Personally, I am on the side of 9 because it has so much character, and the characters have so much character. But yeah, but then from there we have all the other games like Final Fantasy 13, for example, and 13-2 and Lightning Returns. They were controversial at the time because Final Fantasy on rails, you had very, very stringent storylines, but in the end, they led us to things like Final Fantasy 15 and now Final Fantasy 16, which I'm in love with Final Fantasy 16, even if it's one of the worst critiqued numbered games in the series, right? But it is an amazing game. It has a great storyline, and it feels like a true comeback to form after what Final Fantasy 13 was. And yeah, and I've saved this one for the biggest talking point for myself, and then I will open it up to the rest of you guys, because if we think about playtime in those games, right? Final Fantasy 7, I the time counter said 99 hours and then some, right? Because it capped out at 2 digits. And I played it way beyond that. Final Fantasy 9, the same thing. Final Fantasy 6, I've played Final Fantasy 6 most it has the longest storyline, right? It has the most intricate story details and everything. But if we look at MMOs, there is so much time that goes into it. And I've never played Final Fantasy 14 to the extent that other people have, but I have played Final Fantasy 11. And I have played Final Fantasy 11 since 2005. Up until 2020, when I said, okay, I need to take a break from the game. I do want to get back to it at some stage. And this is one of the things that I do, where I'm currently going through all mainline Final Fantasy games. And I do want to experience the story of Final Fantasy 11 and 14 as well. Because I've played Final Fantasy 11 for, hope you're holding on, 33,000 hours.
Holy
So,
Whoa.
yes, my in-game counter on my characters comes up to a combined 1,400 days of playtime. So,
I don't
and
even know what to say.
And I'm not even up there. I know people that have 2,000 days and more in this game. But I have played this game to the end and back. I have leveled jobs. I have went through all the bits and pieces. I've played storyline after storyline. Unfortunately, at some stage, the storylines have had this section in it where it had um, well, you wanted to play with friends together and you wanted to go through things. So you used, well, probably shouldn't admit that, but you used tools that would go through dialogue quicker for you. So there is one tool within the windower tool, as it's called, that is called auto enter, which is basically just as soon as it detects a cutscene, it just hits enter as much as it can in order to get through the text quicker, right? So yes. So with that, a lot of the storyline, especially when we look at the later additions like Wings of the Goddess, and then subsequently, unfortunately, and I did make the biggest mistake with that, Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, which is basically the tie-in of the whole storyline of all the storylines that are connected through this, right? So basically, if you go into the game right now, if you have all the add-ons, if you have everything, which you can get, right? You just need to follow the storyline of Rhapsodies of Vana'diel because it will tell you you need to have Chains of Promathia mission so and so in order to go through Rhapsodies of Vana'diel to continue there. So basically, the last storyline that they did is the magnum opus of it. They have gotten the game tied together and all the storylines tied together into one big, amazing story arc so that you understand, oh yeah, we're doing this, we're going there. This is how this ties together. This is how this all brings it in. And I have not read that story and I do want to read that story because
After
again, we
33,000 hours?
we were playing the game together with friends, and we were just doing these things. Yes, in those 33,000 hours, I have never really appreciated the story of Wings of the Goddess, Seekers of Adulin, which was the last paid DLC, basically, before Rhapsodies of Vana'diel pulled everything together. Rhapsodies of Vana'diel is a free addition. The whole storyline is the whole tie-in storyline for everything. They have made that available for free. And yeah, so but Final Fantasy 11, it has shaped so many things in my gaming life. We've shared it. We were talking about the game changers in episode 1 briefly. Shout outs to all the other game changers out there. But when we went through our first event together, the changelog, we did make a video together where we were just sharing our experiences with or positive and negative experiences with games. And my negative experience is that I was a competitive player early on, and I didn't like myself after that. Final Fantasy is the first game where I played actively with friends again, Final Fantasy 11, because it is PvE. It's player versus environment, right? You have a PvP component in there that you can engage into if you want to, but it is such a side thing that you don't even if you not actively seek out all these things, you will never come across them. You will never come across a PvP arena in there because they're all instance fights, right? So this is nothing that you will see ever in the game if you don't just say, "Oh yes, I want to enter this." And with that, I found a lot of myself in this game again, where yes, it opened it up for me to be able to play with friends again. So yeah, that's why Final Fantasy is my top pick, and that's why my online handle is choose red mage, because who wouldn't choose a red mage in those games? But over to the others of you. How are your experiences with Final Fantasy? I'm curious.
I could go first because I'll be the quickest. I have never played a mainline Final Fantasy game. I watched my brother, very, very vague memories of watching him do them, but not enough to draw any nostalgia from. But my nostalgia with Final Fantasy comes from my teenhood, where I was dating a man who I had met online. He came up to visit me for the first time, and he spent the summer at my place, and we were like, I don't know, 14 or so. And he introduced me to my first and only Final Fantasy game, which was Final Fantasy Tactics. And even though this man was at the time the love of my life, I say man, we were both teenagers. I feel like I should make that clear. Um, uh, he, we were desperately in love. We only had the 2 months of the summer together. We should have gone and done touristy things or stepped outside once and touched grass, but we spent every single day, all day, playing Final Fantasy Tactics. And that game is so darn fun. I have since purchased it for my phone with my Google money, and I understand why I put thousands of hours into it. But to heck with the parts where it'll lock you out of the game if you don't have a high enough level or certain equipment, and then you have to if you haven't made a save slot in a different slot, and then you just have to redo the whole game. I've done that, and then I subsequently learned how to do the hack where you get or the hack or the cheat where you get all of the job points, and then I just leveled up everybody with all of the jobs, and just so much fun. Tactics, good stuff. Next.
I have played 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are the Final Fantasy games that I have played. For me, I haven't beaten a single Final Fantasy game yet, because for me, it kind of, I don't know. In a way, when I'm checking out retro games that I missed out on, I love to kind of put myself into the renting aspect of it, because I have fond memories of me and my dad going to the store and renting some video games. So sometimes I'm like, I'm going to rent, for example, Final Fantasy IV for Super Nintendo, for example. And then I put myself to that, like, okay, I'll play it for 2 days or something like that. And as an RPG, you don't get a lot of stuff done within like 2 days. So I can't really justify to say like, yes, I have experienced an entire like Final Fantasy and getting the grips of it. But from the little that I have played, I would probably say that, because I'm currently trying to beat my first Final Fantasy game as of right now. I'm playing Final Fantasy X, which I would say is the most approachable Final Fantasy that I have experienced, like learning the things about the franchise and getting into like the RPG aspects of a Final Fantasy game. That one is really good to start with. I'm having so much fun with it, so I can see myself finishing this one actually, because I played Final Fantasy VII for 57 hours, and then it was in 2020 as well, so kind of like COVID came in between, and then I was sick for like 6 weeks or whatever, and then I came back to it and I was just like, what am I doing? I don't know where to go, and then I dropped it. So probably the ones that I have experienced are 7 and 10. I love 7. Love the characters. Also seen a lot of the remake. For those two, and Rebirth as well. Love those games as well. Phenomenal games.
Yeah, I got into the series with not a mainline game, but one of those games where Japan was like, Europeans can't play video games, so we're gonna make a very easy Final Fantasy game in Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which I absolutely adored. Great game. I was the appropriate age to play a easy, turn-based RPG, and just it had all the things like you got a skyship at some point, and there was a hook shot in the overworld and all stuff like that. Really hooked me. Ha! It also introduced it introduced the concept of grinding, because really early on you're really underleveled in that one. So it's like, okay, we got to grind a bit. Then I moved on to like my brother had 7, 8, and 9, and I played those as one would play a game that isn't on your own system. I played parts of them. I absolutely adored like the summonings, and especially in 7 when you had like actually 10 was the one where I really fell in love with the summons because it had the power of the PlayStation 2, which is also the first Final Fantasy I finished. I got all the ultimate weapons, and I really went hardcore on 10, which is my favorite in the entire series. It might get toppled soon because I'm currently playing 2 Final Fantasies with 6 and 16. Uh, Faced a little setback in 6 where my Switch had to update and I lost 3 hours of my save, which not fun,
That
but I'll
sucks.
I'll return to the game at some point. Yeah, and 16 really good. And then there's 14. I got 700 hours in that game, so I played a
Nice.
bit of it. It's not compared to the Red Maid's 11 or my own hours in Guild Wars, which are about half what Red Maids has in 11, so they're also up there. um, but yeah, 14 is just great. It's just it has all the lore, and what I really love about Final Fantasy as a series is that it's there is no grand timeline. This won't be the first time this episode I'll mention a timeline and liking the lack of one. Uh, but there are recurring characters, and
And
it
recurring
is
place names
like
and
in
yes.
16, it's like, oh hey, it's Sid. I know Sid, even though this is a completely different Sid. I know him,
That's
and that's what I
Sidolphus
love.
for you.
It's a nice touch base coming into the
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
like
familiar.
the summons being the same across the entire series.
Mhm.
Even with 16, I had that when um, I think it was Ramu, the lightning one. There was like there was a sound of lightning, and yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
Of course, he's there.
um let me finish this out with two of my fun facts that I have while I was digging through all of the things that I could mention for Final Fantasy. So one of the fun facts about Final Fantasy, outside of those name droppings that Raz mentioned there, is the number fixation of the series. If you look at all the Final Fantasy games, every single Final Fantasy games has a reference to itself in it. Like Final Fantasy VII has a has an Easter egg that when you cause someone to have 7,777 HP, to get a screen message that says "All lucky sevens." Or Final
Very cool.
Fantasy IX has the Regent Sid Fabul the Ninth. He's the ninth of his name. There are 9 Knights of Pluto in there. At the time the game was released, Pluto was still considered a planet, and so the ninth planet. Or in Final Fantasy XI, when they introduced the job of Corsair, Corsair uses dice in order to enhance their abilities. And the best roll of the dice that you can get is 11. So yeah, there's every single game has these little tidbits to itself, to its number, to its mainline number, in terms of what makes this game even more interesting. And then
I didn't know that.
yeah,
I didn't
Cool.
either. Very cool.
Yeah.
and then the other one, Final Fantasy 11. Again, I have to go back to 11, of course, because I love this game. But Final Fantasy 11 has the job system in Final Fantasy 11 is heavily inspired by Final Fantasy 3, actually. Um, so going in there, going to change your jobs on the fly. Well, not on the fly. You have to go to a Moogle in order to change your job, but you have those job changes in there. And Final Fantasy 11 actually ties a lot of Final Fantasy together, to the point where Final Fantasy's producer, and sorry, I'm butchering the name here, Hiromichi Tanaka, he went in and said that Final Fantasy 11 at the time was the most Final Fantasy of all the installments of the series, because they managed to include so many elements that have appeared in all the games that happened before it, or that have been thought of for those games that have happened before, but never made it to light because of technical limitations of the platform or the game engine that they were using or whatever have you. That Final Fantasy XI was the first time that the development team truly could go all out on it with everything that they wanted to be Final Fantasy. And I love this bit, which is why Final Fantasy XI is my game.
Do you still play it to this day?
I have not played it since I think I streamed it once.
Yeah.
Since I streamed, but I do plan to go back to it because I love it. I love it a bit.
Nice.
I did some quick maths. You said 33,000 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, that's almost 4 years of in-game time.
That's why I'm saying 1,400 days.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Yep. But 2005 to 2020. So there is a couple of years there.
that's
Yeah,
Big-
15
big-
years.
15 years of gaming. Quick shout outs to Final Fantasy X2 for the dress fairs and the on the fly changing of jobs. I love that.
Yeah, that's
Also, Real Emotions. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite video game tunes ever.
I hope you have
And,
listened to the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Eris song. If you haven't, I highly recommend it.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I will.
do play the game
my-
because if you get
Yeah.
it as a reveal in the game, it's even better.
Okay. Cool.
And with that, we're going on to the next franchise. Thank you, Redmates. And then the next one, we have two people who voted for it who may have something to say about this particular franchise. They've warned us they can go on for hours, but they got like 20-ish minutes. So we're going to throw it over to Hampy and Toady. And they're going to talk about a very fun game. You guys decide amongst yourselves who gets to start. Nope, it's
Hampy.
All
Toady.
right. Toady, you want to go first?
I feel like the best way we can keep this as succinct as possible is if we direct our focus on the nostalgia factor and why it brings us nostalgia, because I think we can maybe do that without going like every single game. So I will start with a story, or my explanation of that, because I think perhaps like us three, like Red Mage and Ras can empathize. A lot of my nostalgia of games and gaming when I was younger revolves around my siblings, and I was the younger one. In both households, I was the young sibling. And Pokemon is always, Pokemon. Here's the sentence. It was my equalizer. It was the one and genuinely, I think, only game that put me on an equal field as my older brother and sister. Because I didn't suck at it like I did every other game that we all played, and then they were better at it and I wasn't. And I specifically remember the van ride to out eastern Canada, where we three were just playing Pokemon the whole time, and other sister was reading. She was weird. And we would just play Pokemon and play Pokemon. And I said, because I had the one version, it was blue, and they had red, I said I caught a Doduo. And I really hope that I'm right that it was Doduo, because people are going to fact check me. And it was one of those Pokemon that my brother and sister could not have caught because it was version specific. And so we didn't understand version specifics because we were tiny and the internet didn't exist and our brains were dumb. And so they thought that I was just really good at Pokemon and that I caught a Pokemon that they didn't. And then they wanted to trade me for it. And of course, I finally got to say no. And I got to say, I have this and you don't. And throughout the years of Pokemon, even as we got older and had more adult friendships with my brother and sister, of course, Pokemon existed still. And we still, of course, played it. And of course, we bought opposite versions. And it still was that equalizer of the one game that we all made time to play and then could chat about and could say, like, have you beaten this gym yet? What starter did you choose? And so I think for me, my nostalgia factor with Pokemon, I still to this day name my rival after my sister. Although that's a lie because I just finally started Shining Pearl, and for the first time ever since Pokemon came to North America in, is it '08 or '98? I named my rival after my spouse, and that felt weird. None of that matters. It's so good. Happy, go.
All right. Yeah, I can talk about this for quite some time. Pokemon means a lot to me, and I picked it in a top 3 because I was going through a lot of bullying in school, and ever since I was probably 7, as long as I can remember there, and up until I was 15, I think. There was, at least on a weekly basis, there was some bullying, and what helped me a lot through that was video games, but specifically, I could go home and play Pokemon. Because in Pokemon, I felt like it was, at that time, it felt like, hey, this is my adventure. I get to go out in the world and I get to meet, like, I get to test myself. I get to catch, like, new friends, if that makes sense. Get to use them and hang out and whatever, the more, the further you played in the series, you could do more stuff with your Pokemon. So that was really cool. And it started for me in Red, Blue, and Yellow. I don't specifically remember how, like, the timeline, if I watched the anime first and then got the games. Because in Europe, we got them pretty late. We got them in 99. Even Pokemon Yellow, we got in 2000. So I think the anime was going on, and then, yeah, there were the Pokemon cards as well. So yeah, we in Europe, I felt like the Pokemon boom, we just got like, it was like if everything was in a bucket, it was just like here, and they poured all of it on us Europeans. You got the anime, you got the games, you got the Pokemon cards, all within like 99, 2000. And those games are buggy, glitchy messes, but they hold up so well. They are also within the reach of actually catching them all, because it's the first 151. You could even perform a pretty easy glitch to get Mew, which was like the talk of the playground. If you showed up with a Mew, you were like, hell yeah, you were the badass of the playground. And also performing like the missing no glitch to get infinite rare candies as well. Like, oh, how do you do that? And then there were like schoolyard rumors and everything, like Mew under the truck is a classic one, for example. So that was the time before the internet. It was a very special time. I feel like we look back upon fondly. And then you have the sequels, Gold, Silver, Crystal, that I feel is like the millennials' favorite Pokemon game. I gotta say, yeah, yes. I'm a millennial.
100% gold.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because when you got those games, it's like they expanded on everything. You got new Pokemons. You got such beautiful. I mean, sure, it was the Game Boy, but the graphics were amazing. The music, Day and Night Cycle. You have the freaking weekly like events. You can go and catch Lapras on Fridays. You had the bug catching contests on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And then you had special items that only showed up that specific day. You had to find, I don't really know. Yeah, exactly. I don't remember the names, but it was like Freya on Fridays or something. And they were at a specific spot every Friday.
Yeah.
So freaking cool. And yeah, those games like also have flaws, but what game doesn't have flaws, really? Gotta focus on the positives. Gold, Silver, and Crystal were absolutely amazing. They really built on everything, it felt like. Of course, there's this amazing thing, and like it or not, you could go back to Kanto, which is the region of the first game. Like putting yourself, it's kind of like, yeah, putting yourself there. It was such a huge deal. I don't know if there were any other games that really were like, hey, you could go back to the last place in the previous game. It's entirely there. Um, so freaking good. And
climb
yeah,
a giant mountain and then make the main protagonist or antagonist of that previous generation the big final guy to fight with his like level 81 Pikachu or whatever. Like they just built up that tension so incredibly. Gold is my favorite Pokemon game of all time, ever, forever. So good.
yeah, I agree. And then, of course, you can also mention the remakes of those two games, like Leaf Green and Fire Red is what I think is the definitive way of experiencing the first generation.
Yeah.
Let's Go, I don't know about Let's Go. It kind of went into a kind of a different path there with like, they try to capitalize a little bit on Pokemon Go and get new players into the Pokemon franchise, but then they introduced new players to a style that isn't really the old like Pokemon, because you didn't have to weaken the Pokemon to catch them. You just like threw the balls and everything, and it was very hand-holdy. And I don't like games holding my hand. I'm like, stop holding my hand. I want to walk on my own and explore.
I'll be very curious to hear your takes on some of the more recent Pokemon then.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see about the time here. Otherwise, we'll do it in the previous, like a different episode. But then you get to Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, which was my, so to speak, final generation growing up. And I think that, sure, they withdrew a lot of Pokemon because you had a total of Pokemon of 386, but you could only catch 200 in those games, and they kind of took away the tagline, I've got to catch them all. Like, nope, that you can't do that anymore. However, you could, if you looked like on other consoles, you had, for Generation 3, you had Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness for GameCube. Two, what I would say, very underrated Pokemon games that people should experience. I really hope that Nintendo does something. They sit on a lot of good games on from the GameCube, and Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness are really, really good. So, for example, in those games, you could get Lugia and Ho-Oh, for example, and then you could trade that into Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. And then suddenly you unlock a Pokédex that is like, hey, you can actually get the 386 Pokemon.
Yeah.
So you could expand on that. And I remember it was very cool showing up to the schoolyard with Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and you had a freaking Ho-Oh, and they're like, what? But you can't catch that one. How did you get it? And then, yeah, you had Colosseum. So yeah, Generation 3 was awesome to experience because you had Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, Leaf Green, Fire Red, and then Colosseum XD Gale of Darkness. And you could, maybe not everyone would, but you can kind of fit in Pokemon Channel in there. The GameCube game where you and Pikachu watch television, and that's all you do. But if you beat that game, which, why would you do that? But for those who were crazy enough to do so, you would get a Pokemon called Jirachi. And it was the only way at that time, without like going to an event with your cartridge, it was the only way for you to get that Pokemon. So it kind of was like the Mew of Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. So you can kind of fit in Channel in there as well, because you needed that game to get the entire Pokedex. Then I don't know about you, Toady. Did you play like the DS games or the 3DS ones?
Every single generation, all of them, every one of them. You have made me now think about, again, trying to kind of tie it back to like nostalgia or whatever. With the console games, the N64, we can't not talk about.
Oh yeah.
Help
Pokemon
me.
Stadium, Stadium
Stadium.
2.
That's the word. I just couldn't get Coliseum out of my head.
Yeah.
Stadium. Again, sitting at the cousin's place, putting. It was Stadium 1. You could still put your cartridge in. Yeah, because
Oh,
that was
yeah.
a way to play without rental Pokemon.
So many Pokemon Stadium copies came with a transfer pack
Mhm.
that you had in the back of the controller. You could fit in the cartridge of red, blue, and yellow.
Yeah.
And then for Pokemon Stadium 2, you had gold, silver, crystal as
Yeah.
well.
So good. And what a fun way of making the concept of like a Pokemon goes in a Pokeball and goes and battles. But for us, the Pokemon went in this little weird add-on thing with the cartridge in it into your other game. It just made it so fun. And the 3D, I think, at least for me, that was my first time seeing a Pokemon exist in 3D was the Stadium
Yeah.
games. And nowadays, playing Pokemon rental randomizers with Stadium is a hoot and torture, but a hoot. But yeah.
I really hope they bring back Pokemon Stadium in some capacity. They kind of experimented on the Wii with Battle Revolution, but the thing is that you couldn't pick your Pokemon. You had a team, like, here you go, 6 Pokemon, but you couldn't, like,
Yeah.
you had 2 different teams to choose from, and then you had to unlock more teams. So it wasn't really the same rental thing from N64.
Mm-hmm.
I got back into Pokemon again, because I think it was around 2006 or something. I didn't have a DS, and then I somehow got into this. No, I'm growing away from video games. Video games are not cool. Blah 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 blah. Blah. Started high school and whatever, and then 2 years later, I was just like, oh shit, I love these games, and then I bought a bunch of more. So, and then I never turned back. But I didn't have a DS. I got a DS from my 3DS from my friend, and then I jumped on the franchise again in X and Y, which were the first. I don't know if you would say 3D Pokemon games because they're kind of 2.5D. You
Yeah.
couldn't really control the camera, and but many people point towards that entry to be like the start of like a downfall for Pokemon. But I would disagree. It has so many wonderful features with those games as well. And as of this recording, we're getting kind of a sequel, Pokemon ZA. I don't know how you pronounce it, but yeah, we're getting that very soon.
In the Arceus style, or the Legends style, we'll call it, which, I
Yeah.
mean, Legends is a whole other thing we could talk about for 17 years. Did you, I guess just the quick touch, did you enjoy playing Legends of Arceus?
I did. It
Yeah.
was an interesting touch. I feel more like it's a beginning than like, oh, this is it. This
Mhm.
is what we should make Pokemon games of in the future. Because the catching mechanic was probably the best part of it. That you could sneak up, and sometimes it was just like, no, this Pokemon is too strong. You have to approach it and weaken it. I think that is the future of Pokemon games, to evolve it in that direction. But yeah, then
fun.
the 3D Pokemon games that we've gotten previously, say, if we're gonna cut it real quick, Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet. I'm not the biggest fan of them, if I may say so. But I would probably say, because I have now experienced the other generations of Pokemon, I have played Black and White, and I can definitely see why there's this whole meme like, oh, who plays Pokemon for the story? But those who haven't experienced Black and White, they don't know what they're missing out on, because the story in Black and White and Black and White 2, so freaking good.
Hard agree. Probably my favorite storyline in Pokemon. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it went like outside of Pokemon in a way. It's like who you are as a human and what you value and stuff like that. And I feel like when it comes to the story, Pokemon hasn't really come back to that yet.
I feel like they tried with Scarlet Violet, sort of.
They did some interesting touches there.
But they
with,
still
like,
dropped the ball, I think.
Yeah. I the biggest disappointment for me is Sword and Shield, but not gonna open that box entirely and talk about it, but for me, Sword and Shield, because I love story. I'm a theater teacher. I want protagonists, antagonists. I want a reason for them to like debate and argue and all that stuff. For Sword and Shield, the build was not really there because suddenly this guy who you have been following along and you think is a good guy and then suddenly turns by the end of the game, and then suddenly now she's evil as well. Oh wait, there was this huge unknown like evil Pokemon, and you bring it out now, and where was the build for that? But yeah, that's a debate for another time. Now I think we should turn to Red Mage and Raz and ask what are your experiences with Pokemon?
I came into the series with Leaf Green, or actually Fire Red. That was my first Pokemon game. I loved it. Played the other one on the Game Boy Advanced. I played most of them. I haven't played Black and White, and I haven't played Gold and Silver. I think those two I missed and will go back to at some point. Gold and Silver was before I did Gen 2, I think, right?
Yes.
I'm not sure. Yeah. So, and I kind of missed the remakes for those. And, but I played X and Y, which I really liked. I'm more of the ones I kind of got not bored of the games. It was the same all over except for like the story is also usually kind of recycled. It's the same idea, different, which I liked. But I was like, this series needs a shake up. And then Sun and Moon came out, which was like, oh, we're gonna have fun with the series. Which I really enjoyed, and I like not having to have HM Pokemon in my party anymore, which was some of my biggest pet peeves in the series was that. But I still every single one I played, I got a full living Pokédex because I'm a sucker for collecting. I'll have my main party, which for most of the game will be the same six, and then I'll just catch them all. Which is why I enjoyed Sword and Shield for what it was. Story, no, it's not so good, but I liked it being in England, and I liked uh, grinding for my shinies in it. I really love my Surfetched shiny, which is the main reason why I love the entire game. Uh, yeah, so I'm not a diehard Pokemon fan because the moment I get my living Pokédex, I'm done, and it's time to move on to the next one. I won't replay them. But still, I'll pour 70 hours into one of the games, so I do really love them.
Yeah, I've played a few of the titles, but not a lot. I mean, I do hold my original Pokemon Red in my hand right now, so it is the German version, the Rote Edition. So yeah, that
Ooh la la.
yes, yes.
Sacre
Uh,
bleu.
That's before we got the special code where you got different regions for better shiny chances.
So yeah, I'm a sucker for Gen 1 basically. Just because of all the quirks. I have replayed it a couple of times, and I've also went through and oh yeah, I do want to get that level 100 Nidoran at the start of the game and things like that. So I have been trying all those exploits in one way or the other. I haven't played any of the subsequent games really. I've dabbled a little bit in Pokemon X, which is one that I own. And after that, I played Let's Go Eevee, and I played Legends Arceus. So these are really the only ones that I have played. But yeah, it's still comfy to go back to those games, and I do eventually want to play some more. And I remember that Toby, one of our first interactions about Pokemon was me asking you which one should I play because I haven't played them. and yeah, so I will go and play gold. Yeah.
So good. So
Yeah.
good.
I recommend probably a Heart Gold Soul Silver now
Yeah.
because, they're
Fair.
just better optimized and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, Also, quick shout out to Pokemon Snap. It's just
Yeah,
fun
I was
to
just thinking that.
take pictures
Absolutely.
of Pokemon.
Yeah.
Did
I
you play
love
the new
Slash
one
Snap.
when it came out, Hams?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
I loved
Love it
it.
so much.
And gorgeous. I feel like they really did well with it.
Yeah, I think so
Probably
too.
the only rail shooter I'll play. So yeah,
to,
Ras
yeah,
talking about his shinies. I just real
yeah.
quick, because last episode I think I got my boomerism out really somewhere. My boomerism in this episode, you guys have it so easy with your shinies. You got sandwiches, you got foreign Pokemon, you've got shiny charms. I
Yeah, I gotta say, Scarlet took away a lot of the value I hold in shinies with the outbreaks and the
Mhm.
sandwiches.
Mhm.
Pokego also did a lot to lesser the value of shinies, but at least those shinies, if you put them in home and you get them in the game, still are marked as Pokemon Go shinies.
Right.
But yeah, I in Diamond you have the chaining, and that was just a fun
Mhm.
way to do the shiny hunting.
I think that's my favorite way to do shiny hunting, and
Yeah.
they need to bring it back.
Can I ask
I
a
mean,
Yeah.
real
I,
boomer
I can
question? What
of
is a
course,
shiny in Gen 1?
yeah. Do you
Was
they
know?
Gen
weren't
no Gen I think Gen 2 is the first one that got shinies because it's the first one that was released on Game
That's
Boy
why it's the
Color, right?
boomer question, exactly.
And the reason that shinies were invented, according to legend, is because Gyarados is a blue Pokemon, and they needed to have an overworld sprite for Gyarados in the water at the Lake of Rage. And so they were like, this blue Pokemon can't be in the blue water. That doesn't work. And so they made him red. And then they needed to make that rare because you can't just have a red Gyarados. So cool. Love Pokemon.
But then you
I
got it
can
for free.
I can close with saying that the fantastic thing about Pokemon is that there's so many ways that you can play it. As you talk about shiny hunting, you can talk about catching them all, or you want to get your favorite to level 100. And one thing that I can add is that I'm a Nuzlocker, so to speak. So you can also try to do hardcore playthroughs of Pokemon, which involves you, like, if a Pokemon gets to 0 HP, they're considered dead and gone, and you can't ever use them again. So that you're forced to challenge yourself, and you can also only catch the first Pokemon you ever encounter in every area. So it forces you to use different Pokemon every single time you play the game. So yeah, Pokemon is fantastic in the way that it doesn't really stop in how many ways that you can play. And Ironmon has also kind of come
Mhm.
up recently as well, that you have one Pokemon that you have to beat the entire game with.
Yeah,
the real
watching Iron Man
Kaizo.
people. They're nuts.
Yeah, Kaizo Pokemon.
Yeah. Well,
Well, that will lead us to our final franchise to talk about, which is a small one, so it's fine. It is my number one pick, and it's also one of Hempy's picks. I love this series so much, and I will soon tell you why. It's The Legend of Zelda. It is amazing. It is the best. Since my number one pick and Hempy's number three, I'm gonna go first.
Do it.
It harkens back to like Mario. We had one NES. We had two games to start with, and one of them was a golden cartridge, which was the first Legend of Zelda. I didn't really play it. My brother played it, and I made a map. That's basically how I played Zelda 1. You had a big grid paper, and you'll make a map. You'll mark where the secret rooms are, and then when you play it again for a second time, without second quest, because I believe they're in different spot in second quest. So yeah, that's my first experience. Zelda is not even playing the game. Then there was Zelda 2, which was completely different, but I love platforming. So all I remember from Zelda 2 was like at some point you get a down stab, and there are like platforms that you can stab into, and I would build little rooms in them, and That's how I played Zelda too. When my brother got to one of those rooms, like, oh, I can do the thing. And then came my favorite game of all time, Link to the Past, which it set so much standards for the rest of the series, but also for what it did for its time and being such an early Super Nintendo title, having so much crammed into that 3 MB that it was. We had 2 worlds, which was unheard of. You had a little game, you played 3 dungeons, you got an end boss. That was a normal game for the time. And that if the game ended there, it would have been great. But then there was more game, and not just a bit more game, but there was like at least twice as much as we already had, and which was for games of its kind unheard of. Final Fantasy did a equal trick with a second world a few years later with 6, uh, which was slightly different. But yeah, I just love Link to the Past. It gave us we do an introduction, you get the Master Sword, and then the game starts. And that rolled into Ocarina of Time. I never played Link's Awakening when it was new because I didn't have a Game Boy back then. So I kind of skipped those and the Oracle games, which I have played since, and they're great. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, just great games as well. God, I can just go on about all of them. Majora's Mask is like just the side quest, the video game. Oh yes, please, give me the fetch quests. Uh, then we got Twilight Princess, which also amazing. And even though I hate motion controls, I kind of liked the really simple motion controls it had on the Wii version, where you could just fling your hand and it was done. Then they took it too far and they made Skyward Sword, which best story of the entire series. But for me, pretty much unplayable when it was released. It's like, this is not for me. But yeah, it's such a great series, and it went on to what it is now. Uh, you know, which for me is completely different. The Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are a completely different type of game, which I still enjoy, but less so than the structured for what we had in the previous games. Oh god! And then the other handhelds, I keep Miniscap, awesome game. The DS games, they're there, which is nice for them. I didn't like having to use the touchpad to control stuff, but I played them. I don't think I finished them. They might be the only ones that I haven't finished. And then we went back to the world of Link to the Past in Link Between Worlds, which I played so much that I broke the protection on the thumb tag for my DS, 3DS.
Wow.
Yeah, I 100% that game like every single time I play it. Same with if I get a new copy of Link to the Past somehow, be it the Nintendo Online on the Switch, or I finally got a card of it again a few years ago. First thing I have to do is get 100%, one save to 100%.
So it's like a tradition.
It's a tradition. When I get a new Link to the Past, it's 100%. But as the randomizer, which I have played to death since I discovered it, and I just really love Zelda, yo. Hampton, do you have something to say about Zelda?
Oh, absolutely. My first experience with Zelda was when I was 6 years old, and my best friend at the time had A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo. And I remember borrowing this game from him, and I played the beginning of the game. I got into Hyrule Castle to save Zelda, put her in the um, cathedral or cemetery, and then I walked around the overworld, didn't know where to go because I was 6 years old, and then I resetted the save file and did it all over again. Probably a dozen of times or something like that. So I still had fun with the game, but I didn't get further than that. And then we fast forward to Ocarina of Time, which I loved, but the same thing there. The game scared me to death because I was like, what was I, 9 or something, and it had huge spiders, and it was just the darkness, and it has thunder, and I was afraid of all these things. I was afraid of spiders, darkness, and the sound of thunder. I played up until when I got to the entrance of your Lord Yabu Yabu's belly as a kid, and then I just switched off the game and I reset the save file, and I did it over and over again. I didn't have the courage to do it. And then I played Majora's Mask, and that one was even more scarier. So I only did the part. I think I didn't even get to the first temple in Woodfall. I just became Link. I walked around, and that was it. But Wind Waker for GameCube, that was the first game that I completed, and I love Wind Waker. I know it's like, oh, it's too much water, it's spend too much time on sailing. But whenever I return to Wind Waker, I play the GameCube version because somehow I just love this whole thing. Sometimes you go between islands and the music stops during nights, and you just sail, and that was an amazing feeling that I hadn't felt with any other video game at that time. But I got stuck for months because I didn't know how to get on the ghost ship. I was chasing it during this Triforce quest, and I didn't know how to get on it. And that's when I walked on, I think it was like GameStop or something, and I found a guidebook. It's like, hell yeah, time to beat Wind Waker. And turns out that you needed a chart to get on it. So finally, Wind Waker was the first Zelda game that I ever beat. Then years later, I returned to Ocarina of Time and decided, like, okay, it's time to beat this one now. And I had to defy, I had to go through all the fears of the darkness and spiders and the thunder. But what was so beautiful about that game, and kind of taught me in life as well, because I stopped being afraid of these things thanks to Ocarina of Time, it was that you could stand around. You could stand around the spiders. They were just hanging from the ceiling. They wouldn't attack you. And you could just stand in the darkness, and I don't know, Link was like scratching his foot or something. Nothing really happened. Same thing with the thunder. Didn't really hit you. You could just play Song of Storms, stand there, and you would just, you would approach these fears in video games. And it was like, hey, it's mostly just in the brain, So that game taught me to a quote, so to speak, that I still live by, and it's like, it goes a little something like, there's only one way through fear, and it's right through it. So I use Ocarina of Time. I replay Ocarina of Time once a year. It's probably my number 2 favorite game. Donkey Kong 64 is number 1, and Ocarina of Time is number 2. So that one means a lot to me. And then I went back again, got my own copy of A Link to the Past, or as a matter of fact, I think I borrowed it from a friend when I was 16, and I still have it, and we lost, contact, so I still have it. And I beat that game. And then I just explored the Zelda franchise, and I learned that, wow, basically every Zelda game that I play, I love it. I got the Zelda collection for GameCube, played Zelda 1 and 2 for NES. That's also the game I learned that, oh shit, there was a console before the Super Nintendo that I didn't know of. And then I grew in love with retro gaming through that, because I played Zelda 1 and 2, and I loved Zelda 2. I absolutely love Zelda 2, even though it's side-scroll and everything. And then, as time followed, I played Four Swords Adventure for GameCube. Very different, but kind of uses like puzzle elements from A Link to the Past that I really, really liked. And you have 4 links to switch between and stuff. Twilight Princess. Some people are like, hey, do you like Wind Waker or do you like Twilight Princess? I'm like, I like both. Both are phenomenal. Both are great. Both have their strengths. Both have their weaknesses. But both have really good story. And I really, really enjoy them both. Majora's Mask and let's see here. Majora's Mask, Link's Awakening, Minish Cap, and the Oracle the Oracle games I played for the first time on stream. All those games, love them. Sure, I have my ranking on order or whatever, but all in all, I really enjoy every single Zelda game I've got my hands on. Luckily, I started playing Skyward Sword on the Switch. I think that was a good choice to wait for that, because I bought the collector's edition thing for the Wii and got the gold controller and everything. Mostly just wanted the gold controller. And then I didn't play Skyward Sword. So it just stood there on the shelf for years. But then I was like, okay, time to play Skyward Sword now without motion controls, and it's so good. It's underrated.
Played it since on the Switch, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And the only games that I haven't played are Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, and also A Link Between Worlds, which I know is like, hey, that's the big one, because the DS games are like, yeah, they're so, but A Link Between Worlds, I always hear like, hey, that's the one you should play. So that one is coming up pretty soon. And then Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, phenomenal games. It was the right direction. I feel it was the right direction for the series. It's fun that they still keep the original idea with like Echoes of Wisdom that just came out. It's fun that they kind of keep the old school thing, but also like explore the franchise with Breath of the Wild. I played it for the first time for the Wii U in 2017. I played it for 5 hours and was just sitting with this puzzle. I had the entire gamepad trying to like switch it around and upside down. I was like, no, I'm gonna wait a couple of years till I have the Switch and play it then. And that's what I did. And I think that they're some of the best games of all time. Tears of the Kingdom, brilliant follow-up. It can be a little bit of a mouthful, I felt like. Breath of the Wild is a little bit more replayable. Tears of the Kingdom is fantastic, but it's one of those games where like Breath of the Wild, you feel like, I can kind of pick up and play that like next year. Tears of the Kingdom, I'm gonna have to wait 3 years or something, because that was a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel that for me, Tears of the Kingdom is the more replayable one of those two. It's probably because of the dungeons and all the things that I was missing in Breath of the Wild that was brought back. Yeah, I'm sad the franchise went that way. Obviously, then even like the 2D franchise went in a different direction. Without going into too much spoilers in the most recently released game, and I hope there's a return to the classics at some point. But if not, we have so many really good games to return to anyway, which I'm fine with. I would like a Link to the Past remake at some point. That would make my world.
+1.
Just in the Link's Awakening engine. Just do it.
Retweet.
Do it, Nintendo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Toady, Red Mage, do you have any memories and with the Zelda franchise?
Well, my Zelda memories now are sort of because of Red Mage. Zelda is the franchise that I have played the least and loved the most. I was so bad at Zelda as a kid. You were describing your early Zelda life, Hamps, and mine is very similar. I don't even think I got the princess to the cathedral. I think I couldn't make it that far. But still just restarted it and did it 17 times. But watched my siblings beat them all. Ocarina of Time, I was too scared to go into the Deku Tree. So that ended very briefly. So the first Zelda game that I played and actually beat, and to this day the only Zelda game that I've beat, was when I was 23 is when it came out. The one that's like Link to the Past, Link Between Worlds. Holy smokes, what a beautiful game. So fun and so approachable for someone who is less good at games that aren't navigating menus and assigning, profit margins and stuff. Really love that. And since then, I tried Twilight Princess. I sucked at it. You know, I've tried them all and I just suck at them. But Red Mage recently sent me Breath of the Wild and I've recently dove into it. And I do still really suck at it. Combat, I somebody comes to murder me and I get so uppity, I guess, that I press down on the left thumbstick and so then I crouch. And I shouldn't be crouching, I should be running. But I'm having a hoot with it still. I'm just taking it much more slowly because I'm still so poor at the game. But now all of that to say, I feel like I still have so much love for this series in my heart, and I still enjoy watching it, and I still enjoy playing it, and I still enjoy falling asleep to retrospectives on it. I just am no good at it myself.
Haven't you also played Link's Awakening on the Switch?
Oh, I did that too. Yeah, I beat that one too, and I'm so happy about that. Sometimes having a bad memory is really great.
That one is really good. Link's Awakening is really good.
Yeah.
So good, and the remake was phenomenal. And yes,
Yeah.
I beat that one as well. So good.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
No, no. You mentioned that I gave you Breath of the Wild because I also gifted you that one. You know.
You did. You're a really incredible pal. Yeah, really great stuff.
Do I have memories of any of the Zelda? I don't know, right? No, of course. I mean, as I mentioned in the first episode, I never had home consoles up until the PlayStation, but I had a Game Boy, so I played Link's Awakening. I played Link's Awakening DX, then later on, which it's just the same game, but it's colorful. I played Oracle of Seasons. I played Oracle of Ages. Right, so those were the 4, and I played them. Well, again, to the wall and back, right? I have hundreds of hours in across those games back in the day. I played a little bit of Link to the Past back then at a friend's place. Never really got into it because, again, not my console, not my time. And if you only played for an hour or two, it's like, yeah, it's fun, right? Because it is basically similar to what you have been doing on the Game Boy games, but it's if you don't have the console, you're not playing it. And then from there, I took a long Zelda break until I got a Wii and played Skyward Sword. And yes, I played Skyward Sword on the Wii in my apartment in a summer, 36 degrees outside, 40 degrees inside, and I was sitting or standing in front of my TV and I was waving around like crazy because I wanted to finish the game. And I
What a place to jump back into the franchise.
Yeah,
I know. And then, but I never finished that at the time. I got very far into it, but I remember that the second time that you had to go to the desert temple thing, I just couldn't find my way, and that was it. That's where it stopped. But I have gotten Redemption. I have finished Skyward Sword on the Switch. And from there, of course, I mean, I went into Breath of the Wild. And for those of you who have been listening to the first episode, I mentioned when we talked about Animal Crossing, that Animal Crossing is my third most played game with over 300 hours in the game. Breath of the Wild has 550 on my Switch, and that's not the only Switch where I've played it. So I have over 900 hours in Breath of the Wild by now. And this game, I'm not kidding, is probably my most loved entry of the series. And again, I will go against what Ras said about Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom is just too much. There is where Breath of the Wild lacks, and I do get that, because Breath of the Wild feels empty, feels barren, right? And I love that about this game. There is a good few bits to do, but there is so much emptiness. There's so much vast space in that game that it really feels like you have to travel far to do your thing in the game. Tears of the Kingdom is just, oh yeah, let's cram everything into a game and let's just make it 400 hours of content that you never can get away from it, right? That's how Tears of the Kingdom feels to me, because there's just, yes, you turn left and, oh, there's 15 things to do over there. And where am I starting? What am I getting into?
ADHD the game.
Exactly. Yeah. And with Breath of the Wild, I'm a little bit biased there as well because I wanted at some stage to just do some speed running, and I did. And I'm still trying to improve the dog percent speed run in Breath of the Wild, which I've recently gotten under 2.5 hours, which I'm really proud
Nice.
of myself that I
Ooh.
managed
GG.
that. I mean, world record
GG.
is under an hour by now, so I'm far away from world record territory there. But yeah, exploiting the game and exploiting the mechanics in there, so much fun. And Tears of the Kingdom really didn't do that for me in that regard.
For
And
those who don't know about dog percent, that's petting all the dogs in the
oh yeah,
game,
right.
right?
Yeah, that's exactly. So there's 16 dogs in the game that have treasure, right? There's a little more than 16 dogs in the game in total, but 16 dogs hide treasure. And basically the idea is you just go out in the world, you pet all the dogs, you get their treasure, and that's it, right? Forget about Ganon, forget about Hyrule being succumbing to the malice of the game. No, no, you're just making friends with dogs.
Yeah, the real adventure was the dogs we petted along the way.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've
I
tried to get back into those older games as well, like Twilight Princess and even back to the N64 games, but I I'm not feeling it, to be honest. But maybe, and I do think that this has to do with looking back, I never had those games, and the visual style is not appealing if you jump into this as a new game, which is
Yeah, I can see
unfortunate.
that. Yeah, I'm a fan of polygons myself, so I really like the N64 games, for example. I forgot to mention real quick my experience with Majora's Mask there, because I tried multiple times to play that game in my life, because I really wanted to play it, because N64 is one of my favorite consoles, and I really liked Ocarina of Time. So it was that story that, yeah, it was too scary. And then I played many times where I got up to like Great Bay Temple, which is at the time I thought it was a mess to get through. It was so frustrating to get through that one. Probably one of the most frustrating dungeons of the franchise. But then I got back, now, I think it was 2021, and I just started working as a theater teacher. And then I played Majora's Mask, like, okay, let's try to beat this game for the first time. And then I open up and I was like, oh my god, it's like scheduling. You just have to schedule the time and place where to be. I get it now.
Yeah.
So every time I play Majora's Mask now, I'm like, yep, I'll sit with like a pen and paper. I'm like, okay, I go there at that time, there at that time, and that's my day one, day two. We go there and there, and that made me love Majora's Mask so much more.
The time loop is freeing in a way. I've found this with other time loop games, and I feel like as soon as you have that epiphany that no, the time loop isn't a constraint, it's a freedom because you just do it the next time. It's very freeing.
It is very freeing, but I'm also of the speedrunner mindset where I have to cram as much as possible into one cycle because that's just how it works. Because otherwise, I'll have to work up to that point again, and I'm doing other stuff that cycle. It's
Yeah.
yeah, because the Redmates mentioned speedrunning. I speedrun Link to the Past myself. I'm also far off the world record. I think I'm at a 150, and the world record is like 120 or something.
Hey,
Just
you're way
breaking.
closer than I am.
Yeah, I'm 600 in the world or something like that. It's like one of the most competitive speedruns, I believe. But breaking Zelda games just fun. It's what really Tears the Kingdom. I didn't update it because I was duping everything to get like the best weapons, and because I like breaking Zelda games. I
Fair.
play Link to the Past, the preferably Japanese 1.0 because it has more glitches, and that game is broken. It's amazing how broken it is. It's amazing how long it took all the players to find out how broken it is as well.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, just breaking old games, but especially Zelda games, just fun. I can recommend it to everybody. Like I watched the GDQ run of Wind Waker HD, and just a very simple trick item slide, which is where you you slide real fast, and if you do it wrong, you hard lock your game. So I've since hard locked my game several times by
Nice.
clipping myself into a wall because I went too hard. And at one point, my entire screen went blue, and there was a slight beep.
Have
So
you
good.
tried some of the Breath of the Wild stuff in terms of
I
glitches?
have not.
Okay.
It's one of the ones where I haven't really broken the game. When that came out, I had it on the Wii U as well.
Oh, fair.
And when it came out, I just leisurely explored the game. Just
that's
walking around and seeing all the references, and that's basically what I really enjoyed is the number of references it made. And then at some point I was like, okay, I'm now done with this game and I'm gonna beat Ganon and I'm probably never gonna pick it up again. And I tried to pick it up a few times to do the DLCs. I'm like, yeah, it's this one isn't for me anymore. It was a fun
Mm.
70 to 80 hours, but and Tears of the Kingdom was like, okay, this has been a fun 100 and something hours, and I now have everything that I want except for a few outfits, and it's time to play other games, but I'll return to this as soon as there's DLC. That's the
Yeah.
difference for me for those two games. But I could talk on about Zelda forever, probably.
And we can
Uh,
probably
we all
talk about the
could.
differences of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom there.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
that's gonna
Feels
go on
like we have
forever,
some
That-
discussions.
There will.
Oh
there
yeah,
will be
we could have
discussions
big
about that.
discussions about we could argue about what the best Zelda is. Also, it's
Yeah.
Link to the Past, and anybody else is wrong, but it's fine.
It's not Spirit Tracks.
It is not Spirit Tracks. Those Spirit Tracks does have the nice.
Oh, we
art
forgot to
style
mention
from,
Link Faces of Evil for the CDI.
Oh,
Are we
yeah,
really
Zelda's
good?
Adventure. Great games.
yeah,
Great
yeah.
games.
Wand
if
of
you're watching
Gamelon.
somebody else play them and just watch the cutscenes.
Crossbow training, anybody? I love some motion controls.
What about the Tingle games for DS?
oh.
I really want to play those. Tingle is
Yeah,
the
me
best.
too.
Hey,
Tingle
listeners,
is-
let us know if you would like us four to play Four Swords together. Let us know in
Or-
a comment.
Oh,
Hmm.
snap.
Yeah.
That is can you comment on it? Oh yeah, well, because we're
No
also
idea.
on YouTube. If you're not listening to this on YouTube, it's also on the Game Changers channel on YouTube, and you can comment there.
But yeah, wherever
It's,
you find
but-
us, let us know.
Yeah, but let us go towards the final section where we each get to cast 2 votes on which of these franchises we want to have in an episode 3. And then the one who voted on that or who brought forward that franchise can pick a game or can choose like it's gonna be that franchise or it's gonna be this game from that franchise, and they will be the host of that episode. So what I was thinking is we're gonna go one circle where everybody casts 1 vote, then we're doing another circle, and the first one to vote will be Red Maids. We're gonna go by how your pictures are arranged on my screen.
All right. So then my first vote goes to Donkey Kong.
Oh, snap.
No, that's
Oh,
Pokemon.
Okay. Yeah, Donkey Kong Snap.
Donkey Kong Snap. Yes.
New game.
That could be so fun.
Take
Hey,
pictures
just
of bananas.
I want Snap in every one.
Yeah.
Red Maids, what is your first vote? Sorry, Hampy.
My first vote is Final Fantasy. Because I just get into the franchise and I want to listen to some more.
Mhm.
Ooh. Toady, what is your first vote?
can we cast 2 votes for the same thing?
No.
All right. So my first vote will be for Command and Conquer. Please.
Okay. My first vote will be Animal Crossing. And then we're gonna return to Red Maids.
Well, my second vote, well, it has to go into the Zelda franchise.
Ooh.
The
Well,
plot
then,
Because
thickens.
there's so many games that I haven't played in there that I want to talk about.
So far, none of them have 2 votes.
Yeah, I was just thinking we're gonna circle around and we're not gonna have a winner
I will
because I
change that.
vote I vote for Mario.
Nice.
Ooh.
Nice. Tody.
Ras, it's you and I who basically get to pick. So
It is.
Oh yeah.
our first winner, if everything follows logic, is Donkey Kong. Please.
Oh.
So good.
You know what? I could tie it here.
You could, yeah.
I could only tie it with Command & Conquer. But also for ease and expediency, I will also vote Donkey Kong because I would like a deep dive into one of the series or just the entire one of the games or just the entire series. It will be up to Hampy because they will be the
Cool.
host for episode 3, where we will be talking about a Donkey Kong game or all of them. So, dear listener, please tune in for that. But we have one more tradition to do, and that is our recommendations / shoutouts at the end of the episode. Red Maids.
Well, since we were talking Pokemon and Game Boy stuff, how about you go and check out the Funny Playing FP GBC, which is a relatively low cost way of playing Game Boy games in the handheld fashion that they used to come in.
Awesome. And Hampy?
Okay, since we talked about Pokemon and we just barely mentioned Pokemon Snap, I'm gonna say check out the new Snap on Switch, and allow yourself to get a little bit confused in the beginning because it might be a lot to take in, but it is really freaking good. It has a lot of spicy secrets as well in that game. I haven't found them all yet. Some Pokemons are really hard to find.
Gotta catch
So
them
yeah,
all.
check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, snap them all.
And Tody?
I just think that you should find your favorite video game plush and maybe give them a space on your bed tonight and hold them tight and pet their head. Because maybe you haven't done that in a while. Maybe they miss you.
I only have one plush, so I guess I'm sharing the bed with Wario tonight.
Nice.
Sounds good.
And my recommendation will be, oh god, I'm gonna butcher this one. Kiaru no Tami ni Kane wa Naru. Or the English title, The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls. Which is you can only get a fan translation. It is a Game Boy game, which was the inspiration for Link's Awakening.
It's so good.
Even the main character is in Link's Awakening at some
Mm.
point. It's a really fun game, and I recommend everybody to give it a try. And that was it for this episode. Return next time for your dose of Donkey Kong nostalgia. Bye.
Bye.
Ooh, banana.